everybody, Mrs. Arguello here. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to compile a working bibliography for your multi-genre research paper. By now, most of you know about my research question for my multi-genre research paper. It is to ask, who are the victims of COVID-19 who did not die from the disease? And most of you have also heard me go through several of my ideas about what I'm going to research for different perspectives on this question. Some of them are more personal, like about my grandmother, and some of them are less personal, like about what happened to the founder of the Texas Roadhouse chain as he was suffering from long COVID. Now that I have some ideas together, it's time to create a working bibliography. I can also use the working bibliography to help me come up with ideas. So you don't necessarily have to have your whole research paper planned out to start a working bibliography. When I'm compiling my working bibliography, I want to make sure that I'm including on it only credible sources. So here's some things to look for to make sure you have credible sources. First of all, it should be information published within the last 10 years, ideally the last 5. I'm researching COVID, so most of my research will be 2 years or less. The texts need to be written by respected authors, and you should be researching the authors to make sure that they are respected in their own communities. You should also be looking at websites that belong to educational or government institutions because that's where the research is happening. Additionally, you shouldn't have just Google searches, but find articles from respected search engines like Google Scholar or from academic databases like ProQuest, SIRS, and Gales. I'll show you how to access those, and they are free for Broward School students. You don't want to do just Google searches because that's going to find you a lot of non-credible sources, and that's not what we're looking for. Things like blog posts and articles that don't have citations or articles that are written by a business that's trying to promote an agenda or an organization that's trying to promote an agenda are not quality research. So I've decided to start my research by looking into those effects of long COVID and how they're impacting people. And I'm going to do that by going to a database. Now, the best way for me to get to the databases that Broward Schools pays for is to use my blue universal search bar on Canvas. I'm going to go down to the bottom to resources, and I'm going to choose library media resources. Then I'm going to go down to the bottom of the page, and there are online database resources. The ones that I want to look at are Gale online databases and ebooks and ProQuest SIRS databases. Notice that we have the information on how to access these. I'm going to, since I'm at school, go to School Access for ProQuest SIRS to start my search. Now I'm in ProQuest SIRS Homework Central, and there's 2 different paths that I can take. The one on the left, SIRS Discovers, seems to be more for elementary school students. So I'm going to go to the SIRS Issues Researcher. In ProQuest SIRS Issues Researcher, I've done a search on long COVID. And one of the first things that comes up is this article, An Excruciating Journey Back from Long COVID. So I'm going to click on this article. And one of the first things that I notice is that it's from the New York Times. Now, in any other situation, just to get an article from the New York Times, I would have to have a subscription to the New York Times, which can be kind of pricey. But you'll notice that right here, the article is in ProQuest SIRS. So ProQuest SIRS pays the New York Times for access to this article, and Broward Schools has already paid ProQuest SIRS. So you have access to this New York Times article. Upon review of this article, I realized that it has information on how long COVID affects people, and that can help me to write my piece about the founder of Texas Roadhouse and how long COVID was affecting him. So I've decided that I want to include this piece in my working bibliography, which if I'm putting it on my working bibliography means that I might use it in my research paper. So in these databases like ProQuest SIRS, they usually give you the citation information. So I'm just going to go over here and click Cite. And I'm going to copy the citation. And now I can put this citation on my working bibliography. Let me show you how to do that. So what I have here is just a blank Word document. You can notice that I've titled it Working Bibliography. I've saved it as Working Bibliography, and now I'm going to title it Working Bibliography. And eventually I'm going to center that title, but I just need to now paste down my citation for that New York Times article. Notice the citation has the link to the article on ProQuest SIRS. It says that it came from ProQuest SIRS. It's very important to tell where you got your information from, but it is an article from the New York Times that is from the 4th of December, 2021. So all of that information is there in my citation to go on my working bibliography, and I have a live link so that I can easily get back to this document when I need it. As I scroll down further on my ProQuest SIRS search, I find this article. It's also from the New York Times, called The Mental Toll of an Illness That Won't Go Away. I take a look at this article and I realize that it has a lot of information on psychological issues that COVID long haulers are feeling. And since my perspective on this is going to be of a person who had long COVID and committed suicide because of the effects of long COVID, I think that this article might also help. So I'm going to cite this one for my working bibliography also. Then I've copied that. I'm going to go back to my working bibliography and I'm going to add this in. Now, how you organize your working bibliography is up to you. You might organize it by perspective, but the final bibliography is going to need to be in alphabetical order by whatever comes first on the bibliographical citation. Usually that's going to be the author's last name. So notice we go from Belloc to Goldberg. So we're keeping this working bibliography in alphabetical order, which is how working bibliographies should be. ProQuest SIRS turned out to have a good amount of information on that particular topic. Now I'd like to go on to Gale and see if there's any information there on the same topic. Remember, I'm back on Canvas, Resources, and then I go to Library Media Resources, and same place that I opened up ProQuest SIRS, I can go to open up Gale. And I want to go to high school. And then I'm just going to do a search again for long COVID. I actually didn't find much of what I was looking for when I searched for long COVID on Gale, but then I searched for COVID and suicide, and I found this government document from the Congressional Research Service on behavioral health during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I opened that up. I realized that that has some information that I might be able to use, and I know, first of all, I'm finding this from a quality database, but secondly, I know that government documents are something that I'd be looking to add to my collection for my working bibliography. On Gale, finding the citation is a little bit different. You have to go all the way down to the bottom of the document. You have to select, and then you have to copy the citation. I noticed that this is by someone named Duff. So when I go over to my working bibliography, I'm going to add that in alphabetically. Now, you'll notice that they look differently because I got my citations from different places. Eventually, we'll go back and make all of the entries on the bibliography look the same. But it's got all the information that I need in the bibliographical citation, like the author and the title of the document, the fact that it's from a government research office, the date on the document, 2021, so I know that I'm not looking at information that's too old, although in all fairness, there's not going to be a lot of information that's more than 10, there's not going to be any information that's more than 10 years old on COVID. And then also the fact that I found it on Gale and the link to that. So wow, it seems like I'm off to a really good start in finding information on that one perspective that I'm going to look for. On the effects of long COVID and how it led to the suicide of the person who founded Texas Roadhouse. Now, there's one more bit of information that I'm pretty sure I need for that particular perspective, and that is I need actual information on the founder of Texas Roadhouse and his own journey with long COVID. So for that, I'm actually going to leave my databases and I'm just going to do a Google search because that's the kind of information that you can find that is quality on a Google search. So I just did a regular Google search on the founder of Texas Roadhouse dies. And what comes up first? An article from NPR, National Public Radio. That's a quality journalistic source. An article from CNBC, also a pretty good journalistic source, and an article from the New York Times. Now, I know that I would have to pay for the New York Times article. There's also an article in Fortune magazine that I would have to pay for. So for my own purposes, because all I need is some basic information about this man, Kent Taylor, I'm going to go to either the NPR article. I'm going to look at both the NPR article and the CNBC article and see which one has the most information that I can use. So ultimately, I've chosen the CNBC article by Emma Newberger for this, and nothing that I find in a Google search is going to just give me the bibliographical citations. That's one of the things that makes the databases very convenient. So what I have to do is make my own bibliographical citation for this article. I'm going to copy the URL and I'm going to go over to my good friend EasyBib. It's just easybib.com and they will help me to generate my citation. Now, I got this information from a website, but remember, I could have gotten it from a newspaper. Like, had I gone to the New York Times article, that would have come from a newspaper, and I would have chosen the online version of the newspaper. So I have to be very careful about what I'm choosing as the source type. But this one's a website, so I just put down the URL. Like I was saying, I just put down the URL, I click search, and EasyBib goes out to that URL, finds the article and a lot of the important information. I click cite, and it's free, this source, this EasyBib, so there's going to be a lot of ads, so you kind of have to work around those. But it gives me all of the information, the title of the article, the URL, the title of the website, CNBC, where I found it, the date that I accessed, which would be today, and then the date that it was published, which would have been March 22nd. I'm going to click continue. And then if it asks me to include any other information, I will. Like here, it has the author's name as Emma Newberger, last name. Newberger is obviously her last name and it should be capitalized, and Emma is her first name. Her name is not her Twitter handle, so I need to update that information. The CNBC is the source where I got this information from. The date that it was published seems to be correct. The date that I accessed it seems to be correct. I can always click use today's date for that. And then I complete the citation. And then up the information will come on my bibliography list on EasyBib. So I'm just going to copy that citation. And then I'm going to go over to my working bibliography. And I'm going to add that in alphabetical order. Now again, notice that EasyBib does some hanging indents, which is actually what should be happening on a bibliography. But I will just even all of that out, make it all look the same later. Right now, for my one idea on the founder of Texas Roadhouse and how COVID affected him but didn't kill him, I have 4 good sources. I think that I'm ready to move on to something else on my working bibliography, start looking for some other sources of information for my other ideas. So that's some ideas on how to get started with your working bibliography. Remember that if I don't use all of these sources, I can just take them off of my bibliography. It's not a big deal. I don't want to have too much information that I have to go through in order to write my piece, but I also don't want to have too little information, and I don't want to have to go out and do more searching when I'm in the middle of the writing process. So I feel like I'm off to a good start here. I'm going to do a couple of more videos like these where I show you how I found the information on my working bibliography for some of my different ideas, where I'll be getting into how I used Google Scholar, for example, and how I, on EasyBib, created citations for things that weren't a website. So stay tuned for more videos on how to create a working bibliography, but this should be a good start to get you going on your working bibliography. Good luck with your multi-genre research paper.